Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Humanities Cafe. I'm just waiting for everybody to get in from the waiting room and we'll get started. But I'll start with an introduction. My name is Stacy Chidaushe. I'm the program coordinator here at the South Dakota Humanities Council. And the mission of the council is threefold: celebrate literature, promote civil conversation, and tell the stories that define our state. But we're not the only ones in that endeavor. The core mission of South Dakota Magazine is to tell the stories of South Dakota, capturing the unique culture and remarkable beauty of the state through a variety of diverse perspectives, experiences, and they've been doing it for 40 years now through their nuanced storytelling, the amazing photography. And we're honored to have joining us today the publisher of South Dakota Magazine, Katie Hunhoff, as well as managing editor, John Andrews. So Katie and John, welcome to the cafe. We are delighted and honored that you're joining us on such a blistery South Dakota day. So I just want to take a moment to have you introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start. Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I just want to say thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for being here. And thanks for asking us, Stacy, as well. So I'm Katie Hunoff, and I am the publisher of South Dakota Magazine. I've been at the magazine for 23 years. My parents started the magazine in 1985 when I was like around 7 years old. Um, and so, yeah, I've been here in various positions throughout the years, including, I think my first position was a photo editor to try to get better photos. And that was back kind of like right when we were switching to digital photography. But John and I both have worn a lot of hats in this business. And, in small businesses in general, people have to take on roles like janitor, accountant, marketing professional. So, anyway, but yeah, thanks for having me. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
I am John. I am a writer and editor at South Dakota Magazine, and I have been here for 18 years. I spent 3 years writing at the Brookings Register after I finished college at SDSU. So I was there from 2002 to 2005, and then we moved down here to Yankton, and I started working at the magazine in the fall of 2007. So back then I was doing, I think I got hired as a marketing person, and then eventually just sort of transitioned to more writing, doing a lot of the smaller projects, and eventually it sort of ballooned into writing a few features plus the smaller stuff for each issue, as well as a little marketing, a little snow scooping when that is needed, all sorts of other stuff like that. As Katie said, you wear a lot of different hats when you're in a small business like this. So still do a little bit of marketing, a lot of writing, a little bit of snow scooping, stuff like that. So,
It sounds like there's going to be a lot of bit of snow scooping today. So it's blowing around pretty crazy here. I
well,
hope
we're
it's
getting
not
more
that bad
wind.
there.
We're getting more wind than snow here. So,
Okay. Well, Katie, South Dakota Magazine, like you said, was founded by your dad, Bernie, which renowned legislator, Hall of Fame inductee, and you were 7 years old. So, can you tell us why he decided to launch a magazine about South Dakota in 1985? What was going on?
Well, yeah, I do. People ask him this, so I know the answer to it because people have asked him it several times throughout the years. And I think it's kind of funny. Um, he was a newspaper man, and he was like worked at various newspapers, and he worked for a newspaper at that point, I think called the Shopper. And him and a friend sold the Shopper, which is I think still in existence, right, John? The Shopper.
it is, yes.
But anyway, he sold the Shopper, and he's signed a non-compete clause that said he couldn't start another newspaper in South Dakota. So then he decided to start a magazine instead.
Clever.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of funny, but yeah, so that's how it started. But of course, like he was still doing his like regular, journalism and writing and stuff. And I think even he didn't know exactly at the start, like what it would turn into or how important the stories would become to the state over the years.
Well, and the stories are something that kind of I really want to touch on because I'm a bit older than you are, Katie. I was in middle school in 1985, and I think about everything going on back then, right? And I'm just going to tick off a list of the things that I had to do a deep dive because I remember a lot of things going on. There was Chernobyl, Challenger explosion. In those were just in 1986. Then you had the terrorist attack in Lockerbie, Scotland, Tiananmen Square, the fall of the Berlin Wall, war on the drugs in 1989, and that's the first 5 years. And then you look at the end of apartheid and the beginning of the Gulf War in 1990, collapse of the Soviet Union, the Rodney King beating and the LA riots, O.J. Simpson, Oklahoma City, death of Princess Diana, Columbine. I mean, the list goes on all the way up to Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and then most recently COVID and George Floyd. So how do you and how did your dad at that time approach the stories at such difficult times when our national focus is so seemingly constantly on overwhelmingly bad news? How do you bring it all back close to home and make readers feel that, you know what, we're okay?
Well, I think it kind of happens organically. We publish a magazine every 2 months, so 6 issues a year. Um, and so we don't really, I'm not going to say personally, we don't pay attention to the 24/7 news cycle, but definitely we don't in our editorial meetings or anything like that, you know. And I think that just has served us really well and possibly more than ever right now because people do want to escape from that. And plus, like, people always say that the magazines are timeless. Like they can open
Mhm.
one up from 20 years ago and it's still interesting, it's still relevant. And when you kind of dive into like a 24/7 news cycle type story, it's probably not interesting or relevant at hour 25. So, so I think we've created kind of like a warm, cozy, safe escape for South Dakotans through the magazine, but I think it happens just organically. John, is there anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many times people ask us to do stories on like Tom Brokaw or January Jones or people from South Dakota who are these big famous figures. But we kind of have this editorial rule that if it happened beyond South Dakota's borders, it didn't happen. And that's just an editorial guidelining principle that we go by. Obviously, we're aware of these people and we're aware of all the things that are happening in the world. I can remember, working at the Register. Whenever something big would happen nationally, one of the first things we discussed in our daily editorial meeting was how can we localize this? How can we localize this story? Because people want to put a local face on this big national thing. It doesn't work as easily for us because what's happening now is not going to be relevant to readers if they read it in the print magazine 4 months from now. They're going to, because that's just the way our timeline works. We're working on our March April issue right now, and many of you maybe haven't even gotten your January February issues yet. They're still on the way to you. So there's the issue of timing that we have to deal with as well. So um, yeah, that's what I would add about that, I guess.
Well, and I think you both touched on something that I wanted to address too is the comforting nature of the magazine because specifically during the pandemic when people were stuck at home feeling frightened and uncertain, um, what was it like for you knowing that you could still bring a bright spot into the seemingly perpetual darkness at that time? And did the pandemic itself have a specific impact on your decision of what to write about at that time? Because that was I mean, very close to home issue.
Yeah. Well, I just talked about how we sort of ignore national issues, but that was an instance where we actually did not ignore the national.
It's kind of hard to.
Yeah, exactly. There are certain things that we sort of recognize in the moment that are these monumental things. The Missouri River flood in 2011 was probably one that we realized was probably a once in a generation event. And so Bernie went out and did a story on that. Another one would be the Winter Storm Atlas, the cattleman's blizzard in the fall of 2013. That was such an unusual thing that happened that we sort of jumped right on that and did a story on what was happening out West River. Same with COVID. We had the idea of reaching out to about 6 or 7 people across the state and just asking them to sort of journal what their lives were like during these first few months of the pandemic and what was happening around them, because we recognized that it was sort of a kind of a monumental thing that we really couldn't ignore. So we did that, and then in terms of how people feel when they read the magazine, I wish you guys could come and tour the office, because we have a little break room. It's got a refrigerator, microwave, and little sink. But plastered to the walls of that room are all the notes that people write us that tell, and they tell us, what stories have meant to them, or what the magazine means to them, whether they're here in South Dakota or they've moved far away, and they sort of use the magazine as their connection to South Dakota. So we're reminded of that every day when we walk into the break room to fill up our jug of water. We can turn around and read what the very nice things that people have to say about our stories and our magazine.
That is very cool. And you guys have both said things that have just made me think of another question. So when you said, like Katie, you said that the stories are timeless, and I'm thinking back to, I have a plethora of magazines here, and it's like an archive of South Dakota magazines. When I get it, I read it front to back, and then yeah, I'm looking for something else to read. But I already told John that my all-time favorite article was one that he wrote in 2015 about the Wounded Knee Massacre. And there was one that same year about the 8 great Indian leaders, where their burial spots are. There's something educational in every single magazine. I think it's amazing. But I want to go back and look at the ones from 1985, but there, I don't, and we'll get to that. Like, how do I get that? But there's something timeless about it. But how is the magazine itself changed over time? How do you decide on what to write about now, particularly in light of what you talked about, Katie, the 24-hour news cycle?
Well, I think that I don't know if that's really changed even. And I think that's why, and because we didn't change that, I think that's why the magazine's still going strong, because we are presenting ourselves as different than a lot of other media. We're not trying to go after, like a quick headline or anything like that. And I think people just come to us for like really genuine, in-depth storytelling and beautiful photos. And I think ever since I joined the magazine 23 years ago, I don't think that's changed. I think that's still our goal is, to tell the stories of South Dakota, but, in a really interesting way. And the stories that we think people need to hear, need to connect to. Um, I feel like, one thing that we can do is we would never get involved in politics or like kind of have a political story. But I think, through our storytelling, we can bring up some difficult topics, and John can help me here, such as environmental problems we have in the state. So, like our polluted rivers, we've covered, um, racial issues, we've covered, and I think we can do, because we're doing it through a storytelling lens. I think that that's like one way we can make a difference, even though we're not covering those 24/7 news cycles, and we're definitely not going to offer up an opinion on those news cycles. But one thing we can do is, I think through the storytelling, make people care about South Dakota, and also just kind of let them know, and through a storytelling way, like maybe different sides and different ways to view those stories. John, did I say that right?
I think you did. I think in terms of goals for the magazine, in my mind, I think, number one is probably entertainment, and number 1A is probably education. We want to be able to present to you an entertaining story, but have you come away with it learning something that you didn't know before.
Yeah, and we don't want you to know you're learning. Like,
Yeah, we're very sneaky
subliminal.
about that. We
Yeah.
sneak that in there.
Well, I can honestly say, and it probably comes as no surprise to everyone on this Zoom, that I'm a huge fan of the magazine because it is informative, it is interesting, and it is entertaining. And a lot of I could be honest, and straightforward with you, and tell you a lot of the ideas that I get for this program itself come from what I've read in South Dakota Magazine. So the this is the last issue that I haven't got my January, February one yet, but this is the November, December one with Crazy Horse on the front. So I read the article and I contacted Whitney Rencounter and I contacted the guys at Crazy Horse. And so we're planning something for Cafe going forward because there's so much information in the articles that you provide that I'm like, how did they find that out? So, I mean, you're thorough and I particularly appreciate that. And I think, most people who subscribe to the magazine or have the opportunity to read it would feel the same way. And the photography itself is gorgeous. So, the archives that are for the magazine are available on your website, but how far back do they go? And are the articles from issues dating back to the early years, like in the 1980s, late 80s, are they available to read?
Actually, our archives are not available on our website.
Oh,
We have past stories on our website at this point, that we just kind of pick and choose at random,
okay.
but it wouldn't be like a comprehensive archive by any means. But we do have plans in the future to have an archive, and it would be a full archive that would be accessible to South Dakota Magazine subscribers. So kind of like you'd have to log on to our website, go behind the
Mhm.
paywall, and then there would be like all 40 issues of the magazine there. But for now, we do have for free a pretty good selection of old articles on our website,
Mhm.
so it's pretty easy to find old stories to or a topic. There's a search bar, obviously, and we also have an index that you can download from the that's right on the website that you can download the index in case you wanted to go through. And Stacy, also, I think you're going to ask about back issues, but we do have most of our back issues are available in print. We have them
I've got
here.
a list.
We ship them out. Yeah. I think there's probably like 5 issues that we're not selling anymore, but John,
That's
did I miss
great.
anything?
No, I think that's right. We do have a lot of people request either back issues or another thing that we do for them is like a PDF scan of an article if they just want one story, one feature out of a magazine. That's a quick and easy thing for people to get. So we do that too.
I did download and take a peek at the index, and it's several hundred pages of
I
just
know.
really interesting stuff.
I
So
know.
you may be getting a lengthy email with a request on it.
Actually, I want to give a shout out to our coworker, Roger Holtzman. It was really sweet. He has worked here, I think, since I was about 15 years old,
Oh,
and he created the index. He started the index as a Christmas present to my dad, which was really sweet. Um, but of course, we're upkeeping it. So yeah, so it's grown a lot since then because that was probably, what do you think, John, 15 years ago or more that Roger put it together?
Oh, at least, yeah. I mean, it was here when I started, so
Yeah.
it's beyond 20 years. But yeah,
Yes.
every issue we add a little bit more to it, and it grows and it grows, and
Yes.
fairly
it's
comprehensive
lengthy
though.
and thorough.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's definitely a labor of love.
right.
It's fantastic. The detail that you put into that as much as you put into the magazine. So also included with the magazine, and I did mention that this November December issue has the gift guide in it, and then you have an annual arts journal. Tell us a little bit about those publications in particular.
So I can talk a little bit about, well, the gift guide has been going on forever and ever. Maybe Katie can talk about that. The Arts Journal, though, is something that is sort of a new development for us. It came about a few years ago. I think we've done 3 of them now. But we entered into a partnership with South Dakota Arts Council and Arts South Dakota, and just sort of in brainstorming ways that we can really showcase the arts in South Dakota. We decided to launch this publication that sort of demonstrates, how the arts can show people who we are as South Dakotans. How they unite all of us, how they can sort of help tell the story of South Dakota through music or art or sculpture or that sort of thing. And so we launched it, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. We tried to find, 3 or 4. More major feature stories that are sort of lean towards the arts, and we have lots of other little things in there as well. I think it's been pretty popular. People have seemed to really like it. So we have them available on our website. If anybody wants to buy some, please go there and check it out. But yeah, that's something that has come out, I think, in the spring, each of the last 3 years. We think it's been a nice addition to our editorial offerings, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
amazing. It's an
comes
amazing
free.
publication.
Oh, sorry. I
Go
just
ahead, Katie.
cut over.
Sorry.
Oh, it come if you're a South Dakota Magazine subscriber, you get it for free in the
Mhm.
mail as well. So, but maybe John said that already. I don't know. But yeah, I'd love to talk about our gift guide. I think we've been doing the gift guide for I really don't know how many years, but I'm gonna guess like 30 or more years. And it comes out in every November, December issue. So right at the end of October when people are thinking about gift giving. And it's just a really nice way where local business people, small businesses throughout the state, people who have a passion or a hobby or any kind of small business, they can advertise in there and show off what they make locally because our readers, we have over 100,000 readers and 35,000 paid subscribers and they love South Dakota and they want to be connected with those artisans here in the state. John, do you have anything that you want to add about the gift guide?
There are things that show up in there that I had no idea existed or that you could buy in South Dakota. So if you're looking for something it maybe is too late this year, but if you're looking for something to surprise people with, take a look at the gift guide, make a little mental note of it. Be sure to check it out before next Christmas because you're going to find some things in there that are pretty unique.
Well, and I'm sitting here flipping through it as we're talking, and there's dog treats. And are all these things made in South Dakota?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because there's bison furniture and there's like artworks and books and magazines, stickers, calendars, bison dog treats, jewelry. I mean, there's something for literally everybody in here. And I was sitting there thinking, you have a gift guide in this magazine, and I myself have given this a subscription to the magazine as a gift. So I mean, it's just literally a gift that gives. But I mean, there's sunflower seeds and just everything in here. It's really cool.
I
So
know. Well, yeah. I mean, that's what the magazine's all about. People across South Dakota that are doing cool, fun things that they're passionate about, for sure. And yeah, John and I are also doing that. So the magazine does does make a great gift, and it's only $29 a year.
and I put a link to it in the chat.
Aw, thanks, Steve.
Tara has a question in the chat. How do you get into the gift guide? If you're not a
Oh,
subscriber, how do you access it?
I think that we have kind of like a flip. We have a PDF. Is it on our website, John, or did we send it out over email?
We have created a flip book, and we do a monthly e-newsletter. So if anybody gets the e-newsletter, it was in the December e-newsletter. I'm not sure if I've got the link up on the website yet. I'll check when we're done here. There is a past issues page, and it will take you to the web page for the November, December issue. And when we're done here, I'll make sure to go and put a link to that there as well. So there will be a flip book that you can look through it available on our website.
Thank you for that. And I do want to, I guess I should have said at the very beginning for those who are joining us for the first time, this is an interactive program. So if you have a question you want to ask or a comment, either drop it in the chat, raise your hand. You're free to ask any question you want of our guests. It's kind of sky's the limit. Now's your chance. But I know we've talked about Katie.
Stacy, I actually
yeah.
was
Hey, Tara.
just to clarify, I was wondering how one gets in there as like a vendor in the gift guide that has something special that they'd like to offer up. How do you get in there as one of the people that's selling something for the gift guide?
Good question.
Sure. So the person who heads that up is Hannah. And if you would like to send me an email when we're off here, it's just john@southdakota.magazine.com, and I can get you connected to her.
And Hannah's on the call, I think. So, hey, Hannah.
Oh, okay.
And Hannah needs credit for updating that extremely lengthy index that Stacy was talking about too.
It's impressive. It's impressive. So I'm gonna to kind of expound on something you talked about, Katie. You were 7 years old when the magazine started. You've been there for 23 years. That's kind of when you began your careers at the magazine, but is that something you always thought you'd do, Katie? And John, were you always interested in journalism?
No, I don't know. I mean, it's always been a part of my life. Like my first job was telemarketing for the magazine. You know, as I said earlier, we have about 35,000 subscribers, and almost half of them are Christmas gifts, honestly. So
Mhm.
we've always thought South Dakotans are really generous people. But even back at the beginning of the magazine, when we only had, hundreds or a few thousand subscribers, we would always like do telemarketing at Christmas time. And so that was my first job, was calling people. My dad would give me $1 for everyone who renewed. But I did study journalism in college, and I think and it just feels like home to me. I can't really see doing another job, except the magazine and the staff, we did open a coffee shop 4 years ago too. So I would say we're in the coffee business as well. But John, what about you?
So I also did study journalism at SDSU in Brookings, and so I've always been interested in writing in some way. I mean, it took a while for me to figure out exactly what path I was going to take. I said I started at the magazine in 2007, but it's interesting to note that my first published article in the magazine came in 2002 when I was still in college. And that was because I had written a short essay for a news writing class that I was taking with Jack Getz at SDSU. And when he handed it back to me, written on the top in red pen was, "You should think about sending this to South Dakota Magazine." And that, of course, was not on my radar at all. I knew of South Dakota Magazine because we had been getting it at home since the mid 90s. But I had never thought that I would have the opportunity to have something in the magazine. So I sent it to the magazine, and I never heard back, and never heard back, and never heard back, and finally just sort of gave up on it. Well, fast forward 2 years later, when I was a senior, I was taking a magazine writing class with Lyle Olson, and one of the requirements was to try to get something published in a magazine. So as I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, I get a letter out of the blue from Jerry Wilson, who was the managing editor. My article had gotten buried on a pile on his desk, and lo and behold, they wanted to publish it. And so, in a long roundabout way, I got my first piece published in the magazine when I was still in college. And I should say, now that I've been here for a while, I can totally understand how an article gets misplaced for like 2 years, because I'm pretty sure that has happened to me on a number of occasions. But yeah, I'd always known that I wanted to do something in writing. I took a job at the newspaper in Brookings for 3 years while my wife was finishing uh, her education. She's a middle school teacher here in Yankton and has been for 20 years. So she was finishing that stuff up. We moved down here. I did a little bit more schooling and got in the door at the magazine in 2007. So it all kind of worked out.
Kind of serendipitous with the article, with it just writing a paper in college, and here you are.
Right, right. It's kind of a bizarre thing, but yeah.
Well, there's Angie has an excellent question. It's actually something I was going to ask you. It's in the chat. Out of all the stories you've written through the years, is there one in particular you could share that ended up having a profound impact in your own life, either philosophically or otherwise? That's an excellent question, and one that I was going to ask you anyway.
Yeah, the weird thing about stories is that, sometimes you write a story and you think they're going to have this huge impact, and you're going to hear all of these things from readers, and it's crickets. You don't hear anything back at all. And then there are other stories that you write that you don't think twice about, that that end up resonating with people. And I think probably for me, the one that I still think about even today is one that I wrote probably 15 years ago. And it was about two Hutterites from Rockport Colony who were drafted into World War One. I tell the story a lot, so a lot of you on the call probably have heard it already. But there were two brothers from the Rockport Hutterite colony who were drafted into World War One. But of course, as Hutterites, they are pacifists, and so they're not about advancing a war effort in any way. So after consulting with like the head minister at the colony, they decided that they would go ahead and report to camp but they would refuse to engage in any wartime activities. Well, it eventually led to just horrific treatment from other soldiers. They were court-martialed. They ended up spending time in jail on Alcatraz Island back before it was a full-blown prison, you know. They were eventually transferred to Fort Leavenworth, and two of them died of pneumonia there. This was like the winter of 1917, 18, somewhere in there. So, and they're buried up at Rockport Hutterite Colony. And as it turns out, this is like a huge story in Hutterite culture, like all throughout North America. If you're a kid growing up on a Hutterite colony, you learn about Michael and Joseph Hofer and what happened to them during World War One. And Rockport Colony has kind of become almost like a pilgrimage site. If you live on a colony anywhere in North America at some point in your life, you're going to come to Rockport and you're going to go to the cemetery and you're going to pay your respects at their grave sites and that sort of stuff. So it's a huge story in the Hutterite world. So I'd written that story, and it was like a year later, I was sitting here at my desk on a Friday, like working on some feature, who knows, and I got a phone call, and it was from a guy who was an over-the-road truck driver, and his truck had broken down in Utah. And of all the places in the world for a South Dakota magazine to be laying, there was a South Dakota magazine laying on the waiting room table of this mechanic's office in Utah. And it happened to be the article, or the one that had the article about the Hofer brothers. And so this guy read the article, and he was so moved by it that he had to call me and he had to talk to me about it. So, you know, I mentioned this, I think, when we were talking at the Festival of Books. Also, sometimes, you know, when you write these stories and the magazine gets sent off to print and they're just kind of gone, you know, you don't know where they're going to go and who's going to read them and what sort of effect they're going to have on them. But every once in a while, something like that just sort of kind of smacks you over the head. I mean, who would have thought that a truck driver in Utah would take time out of his day to call me and talk to me about a story that I wrote? I mean, that just sort of underscores the power of what we're doing here. So for me, that's the story that I still think about, and the story that sort of had an effect on me as well.
Katie, do you have one?
Oh, I would talk about like my stories more in general. And I don't write as much as John and my dad do. They're, kind of like regular writers. And I don't really do that many features. For a while, I was in charge of all of our food articles. And like one thing I noticed is I get really excited about the stories when I'm writing them, and I kind of become like a mini expert. Well, like any journalist, right? This isn't special to me, but I did a story about how to use dandelions in food. And that was one of my favorites. I just got really into dandelions. Dandelions they're like a superfood, really. And so I just really got into that one. Did an article on sauerkraut, which I thought was fascinating. And then, I went out and bought like myself like this big sauerkraut pot so I can make my own sauerkraut. One time I did a story on elk bugling, and then I was like really into to just like the whole idea of getting out in nature and the wild beauty of listening to elk. And I don't know if anyone here has heard an elk bugle, but it's something people get really passionate and excited about. And I just get really, really swept up in them, like when other people have passions too. And so I love that. And I hope just like a little bit of that comes through in our articles, and maybe we, get other people excited to go do things. I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. Another one that I'll mention that I got really into, and I didn't really think much of it when I was starting it, but it was a story about trees. And it's, not just how environmentally important trees are and whatnot, but it's how we become connected to trees. If you stop and think about it, there's probably at some point in your life, whether you're a kid or even right now, there's a tree that's like really important to you. I remember one of the stories, or one of the little components of that story was a farmer up, I think, by Redfield, who went and fought the county because the county was going to put a township road down on some of his land, but their original plan was to take down this big old cottonwood tree that he had sort of started. His family would go have picnics under it, and it had become like an important gathering point for them. And he was successful. So if you go up there, the county road kind of goes this way and then it goes around and then it comes back around and that tree is still there. And just here recently, about a month or so ago, we're going to have this in an upcoming issue of the magazine. But there's another tree that was sort of became a local landmark over by Iroquois. People would drive by on Highway 14 and it was sort of off the side of the road. And there's an artist up there who said to me, every time we went by this cottonwood tree, I always used to say to my husband, I should take a photo of that tree because that tree looks really nice today. And wouldn't you know, this fall, they had to take it down because they put some power lines in. But she's an artist and she did a watercolor of it. So we're going to have the watercolor in our next issue with a little story about that. So again, it was just something that I didn't realize, the connections that you would find when you dig into something like trees. Who would think that would happen? But there it was. So that was another one that I sort of got into.
Well, and kind of along those lines, when you find a topic that you are interested in, you do that deep dive into the rabbit hole. Have there been times where you've gotten so into that rabbit hole where you find like a whole bunch of other things that you want to write about related to that?
Yeah, that's a danger. I think we probably wanted to talk about story ideas at one point. And story ideas are everywhere, including in the research that you do for stories that you're working on now. Especially if you're out on the road working on stuff, you'll stumble upon things in towns that you want to go back and revisit. But when you're doing research on stories, it eventually it sort of spider webs out into things that we have a Word document that is I don't know how many pages long of story ideas. And when you get into researching one, you might find a link to something else that is on your list. Maybe you decide to connect those, or maybe it ends up staying separate, but there's a new way to look at it. So yeah, it all just sort of spider webs.
I just wondered sometimes about that kind of thing, like how big is the spreadsheet with all these ideas that you guys must come up with? Because wow, I mean, just like the things, even just reading the magazine articles, it really makes you think about things that are connected. Like Katie, you were talking about dandelions, and then as you were speaking about it, I was immediately thought about indigenous foods and how they forage and they use what's there. And so, I mean, just then I was like, okay, we're going to pivot. We're going to, no. So I can't even imagine how easy it would be to kind of get waylaid into another topic with just one idea.
I think so. I mean, I feel like another really common question John and I get is, like how do you come up with your story ideas, or
Mhm.
when aren't you going to run out of ideas? And of course, as you kind of illuminated for us, Stacy, like that would never happen. There's just so many great ideas out there, and I mean, of course, the idea is the easy part, as we all know. The hard part is maybe how you're going to frame it, like what's the story within the story, or how you're going to get some really good photos to go along with it. So the idea is the easy part, but we're never gonna run out of story ideas. And our readers are really, they know South Dakota really well. So, and we know that. We know that they're like really smart and educated about South Dakota. So we have to do a good job of, we can't just present any kind of story to our, and wouldn't want to. But the South Dakotans that read our magazine don't want to hear like a story about Mount Rushmore or something. Well, I say that, and we just had like a huge cover story on Crazy Horse, but there's new stuff going on there.
Mhm.
But John, do you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, I think one of the good things that we do here is, when a reader wants to renew their subscription and they call the phone number, they're not calling somewhere offshore or some island in the middle of an ocean. They're calling us and they're talking to one of us. And so, not only does that, I think, sort of help strengthen that connection between the magazine itself and the readers, but you're having a conversation with them. After you get the business end of the phone call done, after you get them renewed and all that sort of stuff, then you talk about what's going on in their hometown. And so, maybe somebody from Brookings finally nudges you to get up there and check out the Pheasant Restaurant, which we finally did this past year, or maybe they let you know about an artist in Estelline that you've maybe heard about but haven't quite dug into yet, and maybe you're going to do that. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, the readers, they have a really good sense of what the magazine is about and what we might be interested in. And so when we're visiting with them, that's one thing that they really like to talk about. Another thing is the weather, especially if they're snowbirds and they've gone to Arizona. They always want to know what the temperature is and how much snow we have here because it's 70 and sunny where they are, and they're happy to let you know it. So,
Yeah, I do think it means a lot to people. And if you're joining us from South Dakota, which I assume most of you are, like if for the people who move away that live in Florida, or the snowbird states, I think they're excited to talk to somebody in South Dakota.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I could totally see that. Tara has a question. She's got her hand up.
I was just curious with the 40 years of your run of the magazine, how you keep stuff fresh and relevant, or do you go back and revisit a story, like, say, from 40 years ago that you ran and go and touch back on that and see how things maybe had changed or evolved from that original story?
mhm.
Excellent
Yes,
question.
we do both of those things actually. One good example would be the story that Bernie did many, many years ago about round barns in South Dakota, barns that are, round. Um, we revisited that just a few years ago to see if they were, if they were still around, how many of them were still here, if they were being kept up. So yes, we do go back and revisit things every now and then. Um, as far as keeping things fresh, that's kind of what makes our editorial meetings lively, when we come up with story ideas. As Katie said, the idea is the easy part. The hard part is figuring out how you're going to make that entertaining and fresh and new. You can write about an artist. You can do a profile of an artist, and then maybe 5 years later, some freelancer comes back with that same idea, and it's like, well, what do you have in your story that we don't already know? How can we approach this in some sort of a new way, some sort of a fresh way to entertain and surprise readers. That's another thing we want to do is we want our stories to have something in there that offers a bit of surprise. So it takes a lot of discussion, a lot of fine tuning when we get to that stage, but it's something that we're always thinking about, I think.
Thank you for that question, Tara. So kind of getting a little personal here, asking you individually, what have you found, each of you, to be the most rewarding thing about your time at South Dakota Magazine and the most challenging thing?
Mm.
Um, I think for me, the most rewarding is just all the people that we've met and all the readers that we get to talk to and who get in contact with us, like to tell us that a story meant a lot to them, or just the magazine means a lot to them, or their parents. So I think in general, it's the people and the experiences that are extended to us. Like last summer, I attended a Sundance for the first time, and of course, that was, a really meaningful thing in my lifetime, I would say. And so that was really special. And I don't know if I would have done that if it wasn't for the magazine. For me, the most difficult part of the magazine, because our readers are so like they're so wonderful and kind of feel like they know us and reach out to us with story ideas and stuff like that. For me, it's really hard to say no to people who want a certain story in there. I don't know if John finds that difficult either too, but I don't know, just because I know, like, for some people who pitch story ideas to them, it means so much to them, but we only print 6 issues a year, 6 magazines a year. We just have limited space, so we unfortunately have to say no to some story ideas too. That, if they don't fit in with our editorial goals, or we already covered it, or in a different way, or like John said, our job is we have to entertain our readers, we have to surprise them. Otherwise, they're going to stop reading. So we have to do that. And it's kind of our job to decide what is going to keep people to keep on reading the magazine.
Oh, that means it's my turn. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of rewarding things, um, it's probably it's probably being a part of um, really what is a community. I think that's what we've built, or I think that's what has been built over the last 40 years with South Dakota Magazine, is that no matter where you're at, if you're in South Dakota or abroad, everybody is kind of united by this magazine. We're creating a community of South Dakotans that's almost like worldwide. Um, and we see that again by the notes that we get. People from all over the place are writing to us to tell us what a story meant to them. And it's just kind of really it's just neat to be a part of providing that for them. In terms of challenging, as we have said, our goal here is to present articles in a way that is entertaining and surprising. And so, one of the challenging parts for me, and I think about this with every article that I set out to write, is, do I have that? Do I need to dig deeper? Do I need to take this in a different way? Is what I have going to be, because our readers have come to almost sort of expect, what they're going to get in the magazine. They know they're going to get stories that maybe they're not familiar with. It's going to surprise them. So so for me, it's something that I sort of go through with every issue is what I'm writing going to accomplish that, and it is a challenge every time because sometimes I'm not sure, and we sort of have to have those discussions. So that's my rewards and my challenges.
Well, and I'm curious, like as far as you were talking about the article about the round barns, and I'm thinking about the burial places of 8 great Indian leaders. Are these most of these ideas? They're just like, how do you come up with those? Are they mostly from ideas that people submit, or I mean, how do you randomly come up with round barns? But it's fascinating.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, so ideas come from a multitude of places. Um, Of course, there are things that we're interested in and we want to explore and we want to write about. So a lot of ideas come from us, just internally. Again, our readers will suggest things to us via the phone, or they'll write a little note on the bottom of their renewal notice when they mail it in. So there's that. And then it's things that we just sort of discover by chance when we're
Mhm.
out on the road. We can go out intent on covering 2 or 3 stories, and we're traveling through a town, and something will strike us that no one has told us about, or no one we didn't know was there. And our curiosity gets the best of us, and we go and knock on the door while we're there, or we make a note to dig into it when we come back. So yeah, I mean, there's no end to the ideas, and there's almost no end to where they can come from.
Okay. So you're both journalists. We kind of addressed that early on. What are your thoughts on, and not just in terms of journalism, but talk to us about the importance of storytelling, which is what you guys do so well.
Yeah. So I think the standard, almost cliched line is that stories connect us, but it can be cliched and it can also be very, very true because, they really do. And I think I've mentioned it. I'll mention it again. With the notes that people get, or that people send us about the stories that we've written and what they have meant to them. It's all part of creating this community, and these people all of our readers sort of feel like they belong to the South Dakota Magazine community, I think. Um, so yeah, I think it's just a matter of being a really important way to connect us.
Yep. And I think another thing that we've explored is, you know, all the stories that we write about together in South Dakota Magazine, we say that all of them together kind of reflect who we are as South Dakotans and reflect who we are as a state. And I think, that's important because I think once you kind of create that identity, a lot of things can come from that, including community pride, pride in your state. And then that can lead to, caring about where you live, maybe getting involved in your community. So I think there's a lot of strengths that we get from storytelling. But that's one that we kind of revisit. I just like to think that we're creating a lot of state pride through what I think is like a really well designed, beautiful print product. It's something concrete that people can hold in their hands and say, wow, like I live in a really cool place. And yeah, I think the benefit to that is just once you create that pride, people can carry that with them and it reflects in their communities.
And linked to the importance of storytelling, how when that's kind of intertwined with independent journalism, how does that expand kind of on what you can do in a publication like South Dakota Magazine? What's the importance of independent journalism?
Mm. Well, yeah, a lot of people, when we get into discussions about state magazines, um, uh, sometimes people are surprised that South Dakota has a magazine. We've been around for 40 years and we still find people who don't know that we're out there. And it sort of opens it's like it's opening a whole new world to them. Like, do other states have magazines? And other states do have magazines. Sometimes they are a branch of state government, which means that they're under like a tourism department or something like that, which probably, maybe in some ways sort of limits the editorial freedom of what the writers can go out and do. We don't have that here. If we come up with an idea and we think it's a good fit for us editorially, we just go do it. There's not a lot of strings that are attached to what we can do. So, I mean, for the magazine writer like me, that's kind of neat. I like that. But yeah, I think it's just the freedom of going out and exploring the stories that we want to explore and that we think are important to share. Yeah, that's what I like.
I mean, I love that. It made me think, John, that so as you know, because I've mentioned like subscribers and that it's $29 a year. So 1 year subscription is $29. And so that gives us even more freedom, the fact that we're a paid print publication because we are not beholden to advertisers to direct our editorial. And so that's really important to us, and we would never change that. We do get approached by quite a few people who, like, maybe we ask them if they want to advertise, and they're like, "Oh yeah, if you write a story on me, then I'll advertise." Kind of the pay to play model. And we don't, and we are just so fortunate that we don't have to rely on that kind of model to operate. We do call our own editorial shots. And like John said, like if other magazines are being ran as like an arm of the government or the tourism industry, then that for sure is gonna kind of dictate where they go with their stories too. So I think that is what is really special about our magazine. We do have that control and that independence, and luckily because people are willing to send us $29 checks, we can keep on making sure that it's a high quality, that our storytelling is really in depth and high quality. Um, John, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that we both covered it well.
I do too. So, what do you both see or hope for in the future for South Dakota Magazine? What can we expect in the next 40 years?
Mm. Well, hopefully lots more entertaining stories. And yeah, I mean, one thing, I often get asked to go talk to like journalism classes at universities, and they always ask about the future of the magazine industry. And ever since I've been going to talk to them, one of the big refrains has been, well, print is dying, print is going to go away. Um, I've been here almost 20 years and print has not gone away. And I don't think it is. One of the things that, of course, bigger magazines like Newsweek and U.S. News and World Report and all those sorts of bigger news magazines have kind of gone away from a print version. I think we have a really special niche here, being a South Dakota magazine. We also treat it, I think we treat each issue as a work of art in a way that people want to hang on to them. We get contacted a lot. Yeah, exactly. We get contacted a lot by folks who have every issue of the magazine going back to whenever they first subscribed. In some cases, it is all the way back to 1985 because they can't bring themselves to throw it away, you know? And so that's all part of what I think makes us unique, uh, gives us a little special niche in the magazine world. And I think we're going to be able to continue to do that.
It's funny, John, because you said that people aren't able to throw them away, and this is just a little aside thing, but I was thrift shopping, going through a thrift shop with a friend of mine, and it's the only magazine that I've ever seen in a thrift shop, South Dakota Magazine. You don't see any, like, because it's actual storytelling, and it's like, to your point, Katie, there aren't a lot of, like you said, pay to play. It's not politicized. It's just independent storytelling. And I commend you both for it because it's absolutely fantastic. Does anybody have any additional questions for Katie and John, or comments, ideas? Okay, well then I'm going to ask Katie and John for their final thoughts. What's the ultimate thing you want us to know about South Dakota Magazine?
Oh.
Well, I'm the publisher, so I'll take this one on, John. We want you to know that it's only $29 a year, that there's 6 beautiful issues, and we send it right to your doorstep. It also makes a great gift because, like on the back of the magazine where the address goes, we can also do a unique gift message, and then it can remind your loved ones that it's from you, and you're sending it all year long. But and I'm serious about that, but seriously, just thank you so much for joining us today. It just means a lot to us that you're kind of interested in the history of the magazine and what we do here. Um, we do have some exciting things. I didn't answer the part about about like the next 40 years of the magazine, but hopefully we'll have a new website. If we don't have a new website in 40 years, John, we're going to be in trouble, huh? And then so watch for the new website with what we talked about, where the archives would be available on there, um, and yeah, just a lot more exciting stories ahead of us. John?
Mhm. Yep, I would just say from my perspective as a person who focuses mostly on writing, that we're trying really hard to give you stories that you're not going to see anywhere else. And it's about people that, South Dakota is such a small state, you can hardly go anywhere without finding a common connection to someone else. So we're writing about the people that you know and the places that you know in a way that we think are going to surprise you. And we're going to hopefully continue to do more of that for you.
Well, and to that point too, John, you're writing about places we don't know, and that makes it even better. Because there was one, it was several years ago, I think, about Galena Road. I'd never heard of it before, and I was like, that sounds interesting. And there's so many of those aha moments in the magazine where you're just like, oh, I didn't even know that existed.
Sure.
Or a specific food, or things like that. So as a subscriber, and as a reader and a fan, I thank you for that. And as a South Dakotan, because I think in the national vernacular, we're kind of flyover country, but there's so much interesting going on in South Dakota. And I commend you for finding those interesting pieces about our state and our people and our cultures here. We are running out of time. It's time to head back to work from lunch, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today. January 1st would be our next episode of Humanities Cafe, and since that's a holiday, we do hope to see you again on Thursday, January 15th. January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month, so we will be having some guests on. Jordan Bruxford, who's the director of the Naomi Project, Rachel Foltz with Call to Freedom, and Tanya Grassel-Kreitlow, who is the project program manager, with the South Dakota Network Against Family Violence and Sexual Assault. They're going to come on the show to acknowledge Human Trafficking Awareness Month and discuss the issue of human trafficking in South Dakota. It's labor trafficking, it's sex trafficking, and the MMIP crisis is a lot more than you know, but there's a lot you need to know. So we do hope you'll join us again on January 15th. In the meantime, try to stay warm, try not to blow away, and have a wonderful holiday season. Again, John and Katie, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays. Thank you.